I'm the Newcastle County Executive. That means effectively the mayor of Newcastle County. And I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about what we in county government have done to better manage, be better stewards of your taxpayer dollars and the facilities that we operate in the county, and talk a little bit more about what we've done in terms of planning, land use, and how we've integrated some of the principles you just heard about into how we're trying to do a better job of maintaining existing neighborhoods and planning for future growth in our county. My introduction to this whole concept of green buildings, green design, the impact of energy efficiency on our built environment came back in 2003 when I was still working at W. Associates here in Newark, beginning my service then as council president. The then governor asked me to chair the Conservation and Efficiency Work Group of her statewide energy task force. It was a long year of meetings and educational opportunities, a chance to go to conferences and read papers, but it made me conscious of things I did not previously realize. Principal among them, just how much buildings account for our consumption of resources. 72% of electricity, 30% of total energy use, 38% of all CO2 emissions are associated with the generation of the energy required for buildings. 40% of raw material, 30% of waste, 14% of potable water. This is from the U.S. Green Buildings Council. Just a reminder that if we do a better job of making our buildings green, or building green, we can have an enormous impact on our overall environmental footprint. One of the things that we found when I was working at Gore, and then now in my role as county executive, was that many large integrated organizations, whether in the private sector or public sector, really historically did not know very much about how much they were spending on energy for their buildings or monitoring buildings and their operations for efficiency and for environmental impact. When we began a process of auditing all of our facilities at Gore, we found that we had many more times energy accounts than we even had buildings, that there were sections of buildings that had their own separate meters, that there was no one person responsible for monitoring and managing all of our energy consumption. The same thing was true in Newcastle County. We operate more than 50 buildings. Newcastle County has close to 1,500 full-time employees. If you think about it, we have libraries, paramedic stations, police station, our central government offices, a whole lot of facilities from the very small pump stations out in the field to keep our sewer system running to the fairly large, our new public safety building. So just as we in county government really did not do a good job a decade ago of monitoring and knowing about our energy consumption, so too I think homes and businesses need to do more to do that. The Federal Department of Energy has some terrific online tools that we use to help begin to get a sense of the Energy Star rating of our buildings, what sort of processes we might go through to try and tackle our energy consumption. One of our goals was to lead by example. In a difficult budget environment, frankly, it also makes good sense fiscally to reduce your energy costs and to build and service buildings that are less expensive for the long term. One of the other things we've done with some of our energy retrofit projects is to create opportunities for local contractors and green businesses. And last, in our larger county buildings, we have the capacity to do fairly large projects. So as an individual homeowner, I might want to do a geothermal heat pump or a solar system, and that's terrific and that's helpful. But when you start talking about 500,000 square foot or 1 million square foot public facilities or private sector facilities, now you're talking about projects of scale that can really have some impact on the local market. The next slide mentions briefly, the governor and I have worked closely together on this. I'm impressed with his DENREC secretary, with his leadership on environmental issues. The governor has done, I think, a terrific job of trying to really lay the groundwork for an alternative energy sector in Delaware. He's working hard on making offshore wind a reality here in the eastern coast of the United States. I think this is a great economic opportunity for a state as well as something that will contribute to the sustainability of our portfolio of electricity being generated here. He's issued an executive order for state government. My second executive order 5 years ago was to mandate recycling in all county facilities, and we're moving towards a comparable standard in terms of the energy efficiency of our facilities and the sources of energy we use. He's also working hard in partnership with the Economic Development Office at the state to partner with green companies and try and encourage their support here. This next slide, a little busy. I'll try and summarize briefly if I could. A novel concept that State Senator Harris McDowell and some folks at the university championed and actually got enacted and is now available as a financing resource, essentially takes the same approach as the energy services company, Amoresco, that I referred to previously. It allows you to use the bonding capacity of the state to raise funds for investment in residential, commercial, new construction, energy efficiency investments that reduce the operating costs of private homes or businesses or public facilities, that allows you to borrow against those future savings in the energy efficiency of the buildings. So simply put, the sustainable energy utility is a relatively complicated way to do a relatively simple thing. To finance upfront investments in energy efficiency off the future savings of the utility costs of the buildings involved. It's up and running, it's got a lot of capacity. They are just getting started in issuing tax-exempt or tax credit bonds, and they've got a lot of ability to help both homes, residential developers, and commercial facilities. You see the model of the financing there is, and this is oversimplifying, but it's very similar to what I described earlier that we use for the city-county building. One of the things that we've been trying hard to do in county government is to break down the silos. As you heard in the previous presentation, the Housing and Urban Development Department federally is leading a Sustainable Communities Initiative that tries to get communities, governments, and sectors to work together across what were previously isolated disciplines. One of the things that we did 2 years ago in partnership with the State Planning Office and the Delaware Department of Transportation was to sign a multi-jurisdiction, multi-agency memorandum. In the box between Route 1 and 896, the canal and Middletown, Odessa, we will be investing about $1 billion in taxpayer money over the next 10 years in roads, in schools, in parks, in libraries, in sewer systems, in fire company expansion, and police service expansion. And so we signed this MOU between the municipalities of Middletown, Odessa, and Townsend, the Appoquinimink School District, the Colonial School District, all the fire departments, the state, mostly DelDOT, but also WMAPCO, State Planning Office, and Newcastle County. In Newcastle County and DelDOT, the Secretary and I have driven this process where we meet on a quarterly basis. We have paid for and hired a planner who takes all of our plans, which frankly normally would just go into a drawer or be mailed to each other and not really read, updates them regularly. So there's various GIS layers that we are modifying as we go on, so that you've got a capital plan and then you've got what actually gets built. And politics and changes in the economy and changes in ground conditions alter your written capital plans or your adopted comprehensive plans. It has led to some very constructive conversations between the school district and DelDOT, for example, about transportation planning for new schools, between Newcastle County and the municipalities about provision for wastewater management, stormwater, conversations between all of us about economic development and the location of future growth. This may be the sort of thing that you frankly had expected we were doing all along. But I'll tell you that I think it is a significant step forward, at least in our community, in terms of getting previously either disconnected or openly hostile jurisdictions to actually cooperate, not at the abstract level, but at a very concrete, on-the-ground level. We're also doing our best to carry out the promise of the Unified Development Code. We have some fairly progressive provisions in the county's Unified Development Code, which covers development in the entire unincorporated county. A key feature of which is stormwater management practices that are green practices, that are best management practices, very similar to the ones you saw in the streetscape shown before. Last, we're trying to encourage or advocate for redevelopment, a practice of taking previously developed properties and giving them some preference, some priorities, some bonuses to encourage reinvestment in them, rather than allowing greater sprawl and more development in the farm fields south here now. Recognizing the implication of energy efficiency and energy costs, recognizing the implications of sustainability and the concerns that I think all of us share, is a wise way for us to both operate the county facilities that we have now as a legacy from the past, and to plan for the future as we lay out and design and envision the communities of the future. So this has been a great experience and an opportunity for all of us in county government. I appreciate the chance to share on this panel tonight. I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you.